Hello everyone and welcome. This is Chris from Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, and today we're going to be talking about ferns. Now, ferns are actually some of the oldest plants that we have in our forest. They've been around for millions and millions of years. Some of them were actually even around in the time of dinosaurs, though they would have looked much different then, with some ferns actually growing as tall as trees.
Fiddleheads that you can see here are the first growth of ferns and unroll and spread out to show large leafy fronds.
Now, ferns will actually have a variety of different parts. This whole section going across is called the frond. The stem down at the bottom is called the stipe. Through the middle, we have the rachis. And then these leafy sections here are called the pinna or pinnule, and how they're divided will actually help us with identifying them.
Also, when looking at the stipe of ferns, you'll see these shaggy bits, and these are called scales.
Now, ferns are much different from other plants in that they don't actually reproduce from seeds, they don't create flowers. Actually, they grow from spores, and usually you'll find them on the bottoms of their leaves, but sometimes they'll actually be a separate little structure that they'll grow off of. And some plants will put out tens of thousands of spores. Other ones can put out over 1 million spores just in 1 year alone.
On this marginal shield fern, the spores are found on the underside of the pinna. The spores that you see here are found in clumps called sori. This is what they look like as they're starting to form earlier in the year. Now, over time they change color as they mature. And here you can see a close-up of the sori. Each of these larger clumps is made up of sporangia, which are then filled with spores. On this bracken fern, the spores are again found on the underside of the frond. However, instead of being in large clump sori, the sporangia are found along the outside edges of the pinna. Here you can see the close-up of the underside of the fern. The sporangia are the larger dots, while the parts that look like dust are the actual spores. The layout of the sori on ferns are a great feature to use when identifying different fern species. There are a variety of different ways they can be arranged, and some ferns will have many more spores than others. You can see that the underside of this fern is just covered in sporangia. Though not all spores are found on the underside of ferns. Some will grow a specialized frond used only for spores. This sensitive fern has a hard bead-like frond that will last through the winter and spread early in the spring. All of these spores are extremely light and can travel much larger distances than seeds from flowering plants. This is important as only a small percentage of spores will successfully germinate. When looking at the fronds of ferns, you can use them to help identify one fern from another. And there are a few basic divisions used to sort ferns into groups. Once divided ferns are ferns that have fronds divided into single leaflets. You can see the first division marked here with the yellow line. Twice divided ferns are ferns that have fronds that are divided into leaflets. You can see the yellow line marking the first division, and each of these leaflets is then further divided into subleaflets marked by the second yellow line. Thrice divided ferns are ferns that have fronds that are divided 3 times. You can see the yellow line marking the first division into leaflets. The second yellow line divides them into subleaflets, and the third yellow line divides them into sub-subleaflets.
So this fern that we're looking at here is called the sensitive or bead fern, and it's one of the most easily recognizable ferns that we have in Ontario. So its frond is once divided across. It has sort of a wavy pinna, and then it also has this structure going up through the middle here, and this is actually for all of their spores. So this fern that we're looking at here is called a Christmas fern, and if we take a look, its frond is once divided across, and its pinna actually look a little bit like stockings. The next fern that we're looking at here is called the ostrich fern. It's named that because its fronds sort of resemble ostrich feathers. Usually you'll see them growing in circles like you can see here, and their stipes will have a bit of an indent running along their length, which you can see kind of running up the length of their stem. And these are one of the only edible ferns that you can find in Ontario, where you would be eating their fiddleheads early in the spring. Ferns will live in a variety of different habitats. Some of them prefer forests and disturbed areas like where we are right now. Others prefer wetlands, ponds, and rivers, areas where there's lots of water, while other ones prefer more dry areas where it's really rocky.
Ferns are also regularly used in gardens for their large leafy shape.
Thanks for joining us and learning all about our ferns. We hope you learned something, and we hope to see you again soon.